It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in a small town in Illinois. The streets were almost empty. Most people were at work or inside their homes. The sun was shining, and there was a light breeze blowing. The trees were gently swaying, and everything felt peaceful. It was the kind of afternoon where nothing bad was expected to happen. Officer Daniels was on his usual patrol in the neighborhood. He had been working with the local police department for almost 10 years. He was known as a kind and calm officer. Many people in the town liked him because he always smiled and treated everyone with respect. That day, he was sitting in his police car, parked near a small public park not far from an elementary school. He was taking a short break and sipping on a cup of coffee he had just bought from the gas station nearby. As he watched the trees and the empty swing set gently moving in the wind, his police radio was quiet. It had been a calm day with no calls so far. He was about to start driving again when something caught his attention in the rearview mirror. At first, he saw a small figure in the distance, running fast along the sidewalk. The figure looked like a child, maybe 6 or 7 years old. The officer quickly turned around to get a better look. As the boy got closer, Daniels noticed something strange. The boy was crying. No, not just crying, but sobbing loudly. His face was red, and tears were running down his cheeks. His small hands were shaking as he waved them, trying to get the officer's attention. The boy ran straight toward the patrol car, his little feet hitting the pavement hard, as if he had been running for a long time. Officer Daniels immediately got out of the car and moved toward the boy. His instincts told him something was very wrong. He bent down to the boy's level and gently held him by the shoulders. "Hey, buddy, what's going on? Are you hurt?" the officer asked in a calm and soft voice. The boy couldn't speak at first. He was breathing fast, his chest moving up and down quickly from running and crying. He opened his mouth to talk, but couldn't get the words out. Instead, he just kept sobbing. Officer Daniels placed a comforting hand on the boy's back and said, "It's okay. You're safe now. Take a deep breath. Can you tell me your name?" Still no answer. That's when Officer Daniels noticed something that made his stomach turn. His eyes slowly moved down and saw the boy's shirt. It was white, or at least it used to be. Now the front of the shirt was stained with something dark red. Blood. It wasn't just a few drops. It was a large, wet stain that covered most of the chest area. But that wasn't the worst part. There was a handprint on the shirt. It was a clear, red handprint. Someone had grabbed the boy or touched him with a bloody hand. It looked fresh. The red color was bright and still wet in some places. Daniels felt a chill run down his spine. His heart started beating faster. In all his years of service, he had seen many things, but seeing blood on a small child was something that always hit him the hardest. He gently took the boy's hands in his own and asked, more seriously this time, "Are you hurt? Is this your blood?" The boy finally shook his head slowly. No. That meant the blood belonged to someone else. Daniels knew then that someone else, someone close to the boy, was badly hurt, or worse. He had to act fast. He grabbed his radio and called in. "Dispatch, this is Officer Daniels. I've got a minor male, approximately 6 years old, possibly involved in a domestic situation. There is blood on the child's clothing. I need immediate backup and medical assistance to my location." As he finished speaking into the radio, he looked back at the boy, who was now slightly calmer but still couldn't speak. Daniels knew that asking too many questions too quickly could scare him even more, so he stayed quiet for a moment, just keeping his hand gently on the boy's shoulder to comfort him. People walking nearby began to stop and look. A few neighbors came out of their homes, trying to see what was going on. One woman asked if the child was lost, but Officer Daniels told them to stay back. He needed space and focus. "Can you show me where you came from?" he finally asked the boy in a gentle voice. The boy looked up at him, his lips trembling. He gave a small nod and pointed with his hand toward a narrow alley on the other side of the park. His finger shook as he pointed, and he whispered something that sounded like, "Mommy." It wasn't clear, but it was enough. Daniels took a deep breath. He knew now that this wasn't just a lost child. It was something much more serious. And he could feel it in his gut. Something terrible had happened, and this little boy had seen it all. He gently picked the boy up and carried him to the police car. He didn't want the child to walk anymore, especially if he had come from something traumatic. As he sat the boy down carefully in the front seat, he noticed a small bruise on the boy's arm just below the sleeve. It wasn't large, but it looked recent. His concern grew deeper. Everything about the situation felt wrong. The crying, the blood, the handprint, the bruise, the silence. Officer Daniels was trained to stay calm in emergencies, but his mind was racing with questions. Where was the boy's mother? Whose blood was on the shirt? Who had hurt them? And where were they now? His thoughts were interrupted by the voice on his radio. "Backup unit en route. Ambulance is 5 minutes out." 5 minutes could feel like a lifetime when someone's life was in danger. Daniels looked at the boy again. He knew he couldn't just wait. Every second mattered. "All right, buddy," he said softly, kneeling down again beside the car door. "I need you to be brave, okay? I'm going to help you, but I need you to show me where your mommy is." The boy sniffled and wiped his nose with the back of his hand. Then he slowly nodded. Officer Daniels stood up, looked around once more to make sure the area was safe, and gently took the boy's hand. Together they began walking toward the alley the boy had pointed at. It was narrow, lined with old brick buildings and scattered trash cans. It led toward a part of the neighborhood Daniels knew had some rough spots. He held the boy's hand tightly, protecting him on every step. Though the officer had no idea what exactly he would find at the end of the alley, he was sure of one thing. This little boy had run from something terrible, and the truth would be found in the place they were headed. His gut told him the next few minutes would change everything. And as they disappeared down the alley, the quiet afternoon wasn't so quiet anymore. After Officer Daniels noticed the bloodstains and handprint on the boy's shirt, his heart began to race. He knew this was not a simple lost child situation. Something serious had happened. The boy was scared and crying, but Daniels could see that he was trying his best to be brave. The officer's calm voice and kind eyes helped the boy feel a little safer. The boy wiped his tears with the back of his hand and looked up at Daniels, still trembling but starting to gather his courage. The officer gently asked, "Can you tell me what happened? Where is your mommy? Is she okay?" The boy's lips quivered and he hesitated. It was clear that whatever had happened was too frightening to talk about at first. Daniels didn't want to push too hard. He knew children sometimes shut down when they feel scared or overwhelmed. Instead, Daniels tried to encourage the boy by lowering his voice and speaking slowly. "It's okay to tell me. I'm here to help you and your mommy. You don't have to be scared." The boy looked at the officer's face and saw the kindness there. Slowly, he whispered, "Mommy fell. There was yelling. Then she didn't move." His voice was so quiet that Daniels had to lean in closer to hear. The words hit him like a thunderclap. The boy's mother was hurt, and maybe badly. Daniels felt a sudden chill run down his spine. His mind raced with questions. What caused the mother to fall? Was it an accident or something worse? Who was yelling? Was the boy safe now? These questions filled his head, but he didn't want to overwhelm the boy with too many questions. He needed to get help quickly. As he spoke quietly with the boy, Daniels used his radio again to call for backup and emergency medical help. "Dispatch, Officer Daniels. The child reports his mother is hurt and unconscious. Request immediate EMS assistance. Location, Franklin Park, near the elementary school." While waiting for the ambulance, Daniels stayed close to the boy. He gently held his hand, hoping to calm him down and show that someone cared. The boy was still trembling and occasionally looking around nervously, as if expecting something bad to happen again. Officer Daniels began to ask simple questions, hoping to learn more without frightening the boy. "Can you tell me where you last saw your mommy? Did someone hurt her?" The boy nodded slowly. "There was yelling. A man. He was angry." He paused, wiping tears. "He shouted a lot. Then, Mommy fell. I was scared." Daniels understood this was a dangerous situation. A man had been yelling and was angry enough to cause harm. The boy's description matched a scene of violence, something no child should ever have to witness. Daniels wanted to know more about the man, but the boy was too young to give detailed answers. The boy's small voice added, "He had a big voice. He said bad things." Daniels nodded, his mind already working to figure out how to find this man and protect the boy and his mother. He made sure to keep his tone calm and comforting. "You did a brave thing coming here telling me. I'm going to help you and your mommy now." Suddenly the boy's expression changed. His little hands clenched tightly and he looked past Daniels toward a narrow alley beside the park. The boy's eyes were wide with fear. He pulled on the officer's sleeve and whispered, "She's there. Mommy is there." Without hesitation, Daniels stood up and took the boy's hand. Together they started walking toward the alley. The sun was starting to dip behind the trees, and the shadows grew longer, making the alley look darker and more intimidating. But Daniels did not hesitate. He felt responsible for this boy and the woman who was in danger. As they moved closer, Daniels noticed the alley was lined with old brick buildings and scattered trash cans. The smell of garbage mixed with the faint scent of something metallic, probably the blood Daniels had seen earlier. The sounds of the neighborhood were quieter here. Fewer people walked past. The officer's hand tightened gently around the boys as they moved cautiously forward. The boy stopped suddenly near the end of the alley and pointed toward an old, worn door. "Mommy's here," he said, voice trembling. Daniels nodded and carefully opened the door. The inside of the small apartment was dimly lit. The room smelled of stale air and something sharper underneath. The faint smell of blood. Daniel's training kicked in immediately. He scanned the room, alert for any signs of danger. On the kitchen floor, Daniels saw the mother. She was lying on her side, motionless, her clothes stained with blood. Her face was pale, and there was a deep cut on her forehead that had clearly been caused by a heavy blow. Nearby, a broken bottle lay shattered on the ground. Furniture was knocked over and scattered around, evidence of a violent struggle. Daniels quickly knelt beside the woman and checked her pulse. It was weak, but still there. His heart pounded with urgency. He called out softly to the boy, "Stay close to me, okay? Help is on the way." The boy stayed close, watching with wide, frightened eyes. Daniels gently lifted the woman's head to keep her airway clear, and spoke quietly, "Help is coming, ma'am. Please hang on." He reached for his radio again and told dispatch the situation. "We have an adult female, unconscious, bleeding, heavily from a head wound. Location confirmed. Ambulance is en route. Request immediate medical assistance." Minutes felt like hours as Daniels sat with the woman and the boy, waiting for the paramedics. The boy clung to Daniels, still sobbing quietly but a little calmer now that help was coming. When the ambulance arrived, the paramedics rushed in and took over the care of the mother. They worked quickly to stop the bleeding and prepare her for transport to the hospital. Daniels stayed with the boy, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders to keep him warm. As the woman was loaded into the ambulance, Daniels gently asked the boy, "Can you tell me what happened? Who was the man who hurt your mommy?" The boy wiped his eyes again and took a shaky breath. "It was Mommy's boyfriend," he said softly. "He got very angry. He said mean things. He hit Mommy. I hid in the closet. When I came out, Mommy was on the floor." Daniels felt a wave of sadness and anger wash over him. He knew the boy had just described a scene of domestic violence, The kind of violence that often goes hidden behind closed doors until something terrible happens. The boy's small voice trembled as he said, "I tried to wake Mommy. That's why my shirt is dirty. I was scared." Daniels nodded and gave the boy a reassuring smile. "You did the right thing by coming to me. You're very brave." The officer continued to comfort the boy and kept him safe, while police backup arrived to secure the apartment and begin an investigation. Neighbors who had heard the commotion gathered outside, whispering and asking questions. Daniels explained that the boy and his mother were being helped and that everything possible was being done. The police began collecting evidence from the apartment, including photos of the bloodstains, the broken bottle, and the signs of the struggle. Daniels took notes about the boy's statements and started working on identifying the man who had hurt the woman. A neighbor who lived nearby came forward with valuable information. They said they had seen the boyfriend leave the apartment earlier, looking angry and upset. They even had a doorbell camera that recorded him leaving in a hurry. This would help the police find him quickly. The boy, still frightened, was moved to a safe place where he could be cared for. Daniels promised him he would do everything possible to keep him safe and find justice for his mother. As the sun set, the small town was no longer quiet. The peaceful afternoon had turned into a night of urgency and hope, all because a little boy had found the courage to run crying to a police officer. His bravery had set in motion a rescue and a search for justice that would change their lives forever. Officer Daniels held the little boy's hand tightly as they made their way down the narrow alley. The boy was still trembling, but his steps were steady now. Every few seconds he looked up at Daniels, searching for reassurance, and Daniels gave him a gentle smile each time. The alley was not a friendly place. Old brick walls lined both sides with trash bins and broken glass scattered on the ground. The air smelled stale, with a faint, sharp scent of something metallic, probably blood. It was clear that something terrible had happened here recently. As they reached the end of the alley, Daniels saw the door the boy had pointed to earlier. It was old, worn out, and had peeling paint. A small window next to it was covered in grime, barely letting in any light. The officer took a deep breath. He knew this was the moment to face whatever awaited inside. Daniels carefully turned the doorknob and slowly pushed the door open. The hinges creaked loudly in the quiet. The room inside was dimly lit by a single flickering light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The smell hit Daniels instantly, a mix of dust, something sour, and the unmistakable sharpness of blood. The sight that greeted him was worse than he had imagined. On the floor lay a woman, her body stretched out awkwardly, her head turned to one side. Blood had pooled beneath her head, staining the floor dark red. Her clothes were torn, and her face was pale and bruised. Daniel's heart sank. The woman was unconscious, and the blood told a story of pain and violence. Nearby, a broken bottle lay shattered into many pieces, and the kitchen furniture was knocked over, signs of a struggle. Without hesitation, Daniels dropped to his knees beside the woman. He checked her pulse, weak but there. She was still alive, but only just. The officer's training kicked in. He gently turned her head to the side to clear her airway, then called out softly, "Ma'am, can you hear me? Help is on the way." "Stay with me." Meanwhile, the boy stood quietly near the doorway, watching with wide, fearful eyes. He looked fragile and scared, but Daniels could see a spark of bravery in him. The officer crouched to his level and said, softly, "You're doing a great job, buddy. Help is coming, and we're going to get your mommy better." Daniels reached for his radio and reported the situation. "Dispatch, Officer Daniels. Female adult found unconscious, heavy bleeding from the head, signs of assault. Request immediate EMS assistance and backup at this location." While waiting for the paramedics to arrive, Daniels stayed with the woman, talking to her gently, hoping she would regain consciousness. He also kept an eye on the boy, who was quietly wiping tears from his cheeks, but remained surprisingly calm given what he had seen. Soon, the sound of sirens pierced the air. The ambulance arrived quickly, with paramedics rushing inside carrying their medical bags. They moved swiftly but carefully, assessing the woman's condition and preparing her for transport to the hospital. Daniels helped them lift the woman onto a stretcher. Before they left, he knelt beside the boy and said, "I'm going to take care of your mommy. You're safe here with us." The boy nodded silently, clinging to Daniels' hand a little tighter. After the ambulance left, Daniels turned his attention back to the apartment. It was clear this was a crime scene now. The police began to secure the area, collecting evidence to understand exactly what had happened. Daniels began to ask the boy more questions, gently encouraging him to share what he knew. The boy's voice was small but steady as he explained. "It was Mommy's boyfriend. He came over angry. He shouted and yelled. I was hiding in the closet when it happened. When I came out, Mommy was on the floor." Daniels felt a wave of sadness wash over him. He realized the boy had witnessed something no child should ever see: a violent attack by someone who was supposed to care for his mother. The boy was carrying the weight of that fear and confusion on his small shoulders. The officer reassured him. "You're very brave to tell me all of this. We're going to find that man and make sure he can't hurt you or your mommy again." Neighbors who had heard the noise earlier began to gather outside. One of them stepped forward and told Daniels that the boyfriend had left quickly just before the officer arrived. They mentioned that the man was known to have a bad temper and had been drinking that day. Another neighbor showed Daniels footage from a doorbell camera that had captured the man leaving the apartment in a hurry. The police now had a description and a lead on where to find him. Daniels continued to stay with the boy, making sure he felt safe as the investigation unfolded. He knew the child needed protection and support during this frightening time. Within hours, police officers were searching for the boyfriend based on the information gathered. Daniels remained hopeful that they would find him soon. As night fell, the boy was taken to a safe place where he could rest and receive care. The woman was rushed to the hospital fighting for her life. Officer Daniels reflected on the day's events. What started as a quiet afternoon had turned into a rescue and a race for justice. The bravery of one small boy had helped save his mother's life and set the wheels in motion to stop a dangerous man. After the woman was rushed to the hospital and the little boy was safely taken away, Officer Daniels' work was far from over. The night was quiet now, but inside the police station, a different kind of activity was happening: urgent, serious, and full of hope. Daniels sat at his desk, the boy's small, trembling hand still fresh in his memory. He could not stop thinking about what had happened earlier. The fear in that boy's eyes, the blood on his shirt, the broken home. It was a hard thing for any officer to see. But Daniels knew that his job was to protect and serve, no matter how difficult the situation. He picked up the phone and called the hospital to check on the woman's condition. The nurse who answered told him that the woman had been admitted to the emergency room and was in critical condition. She had suffered a severe head injury but was stable for now. The doctors were doing everything they could to save her. Hearing that brought a small relief to Daniels, but he also knew the road ahead would be long and difficult for both the woman and her son. At the station, the detective team had started working on the case. They gathered evidence from the apartment, including photos of the broken bottle, the bloodstains, and the furniture that had been knocked over. Each piece of evidence told a story of fear, anger, and violence. The officers reviewed the video footage from the neighbor's doorbell camera, which clearly showed a man leaving the scene quickly. This man was now the prime suspect. Daniels worked closely with the detectives, describing everything the boy had told him and the details he had observed. He wanted to help in any way possible to catch the man who had caused so much pain. The detectives also reached out to social workers and child protection services, ensuring the boy would be cared for and protected from further harm. While the adults worked to solve the case, the little boy was placed in a safe home. a foster family that specialized in caring for children who had experienced trauma. The foster mother was kind and gentle. She knew how to help children feel safe again, with patience and love. At first the boy was quiet and withdrawn. He missed his mother terribly and often looked out the window hoping she would come home soon. But slowly he began to open up. He smiled a little, played with toys, and even talked about school and his favorite cartoons. It was a small sign of healing. Meanwhile, the police intensified their search for the boyfriend. They followed leads, questioned neighbors, and worked with local bars and shelters. The man had disappeared, but the police were determined to find him. Days passed, and Daniels kept visiting the boy, bringing him small gifts like coloring books and snacks. Each visit helped build trust. The boy started to recognize Daniels as a friend, a protector who had saved him in the darkest moment. Daniels knew this relationship was important. The boy needed someone to believe in him, to help him feel safe in a world that had suddenly become scary. Back at the hospital, the woman was fighting hard. The doctors had performed surgery to stop the bleeding in her brain, and her condition was slowly improving. She was still unconscious most of the time, but every day brought hope. Daniels visited her, leaving messages of support and telling her how brave her son had been. He promised that justice would be served. One evening, a breakthrough came. A tip from a local store clerk led the police to a rundown motel on the edge of town. The boyfriend had been seen there trying to stay hidden. Daniels and a team of officers surrounded the motel and quietly moved in. They found the man in a small, messy room. He was disheveled, angry, and clearly trying to avoid capture. But there was no escape. The officers arrested him without violence. When the man was taken to the police station, Daniels watched as he was booked. The man's face was cold and expressionless. But Daniels knew that behind those eyes was the person who had hurt a woman and frightened a small child. This man would now face the consequences. The boy was informed that the man had been caught. At first he didn't understand what it meant, but when Daniels explained gently that the man could no longer hurt anyone, the boy's face lit up with relief. For the first time since the incident, he felt a little safer. The case moved forward quickly. The suspect was charged with assault and domestic violence. During the trial, the boy's bravery was praised. His courage to run to the police and tell what had happened had saved his mother's life and helped bring justice. The courtroom was filled with tension as the stories unfolded, but the truth was clear. Officer Daniels stayed close, making sure the boy was supported during the difficult process. He arranged for counselors to help him talk about his feelings and fears. The boy started to heal, surrounded by people who cared. Over time, the woman recovered enough to leave the hospital. She was weak but determined. With support from social services, she and her son began rebuilding their lives. The scars from the past would always be there, but their courage and the help they received gave them hope for the future. Officer Daniels often thought about that quiet afternoon, when the boy had run crying to him. That moment had changed everything. It reminded him why he became a police officer: to protect the innocent, to help those in danger, and to bring light into the darkest places. The little boy's story became one of survival and hope. And Daniels knew that as long as he could stand by people like that boy and his mother, there was always a chance to make a difference. After the court case ended, and the dangerous man was sentenced, life slowly began to return to a kind of normal for the little boy and his mother. But normal felt very different from what it used to be. The experiences they had gone through had changed them both deeply, but they were determined to move forward and find happiness again. The mother, now out of the hospital, was fragile but strong. The physical wounds were healing, but the emotional scars were still fresh. She leaned heavily on the support of social workers, counselors, and the small community that had come together to help her and her son. The days were often hard, filled with moments of doubt and fear, but also with small victories: a smile from her son, a peaceful night's sleep, a quiet afternoon in the park. The little boy was slowly learning to trust the world again. He had been through so much for someone. So young, but his spirit was not broken. The foster family that had cared for him in those first weeks after the attack remained close. They had become like a second family, offering love and stability. The boy enjoyed simple things: playing outside, drawing pictures, watching cartoons. Each day he grew a little stronger, a little happier. Officer Daniels continued to visit them whenever he could. He was more than just a police officer to the boy now. He was a friend, someone who had been there when the boy needed help most. Daniels brought stories and jokes, little treats, and sometimes just sat quietly, offering his company. These visits helped the boy feel safe and valued. Together, they talked about the future. The boy dreamed of going back to school, making new friends, and being a normal kid again. His mother wanted to work and provide for him, to build a home where they could both feel secure and loved. It was a slow journey, but they were hopeful. Counselors worked with both of them, helping them understand and express their feelings. The boy learned ways to cope with his fears, and his mother found strength in sharing her story. They both realized they were not alone. Many others had faced similar struggles and found hope. The community around them also played a big role in their healing. Neighbors checked in, friends brought meals, and local groups offered support. The kindness of others reminded them that even in the darkest times, there are people who care deeply. Meanwhile, Officer Daniels stayed busy with his job, but the memory of that day stayed with him. He often thought about the boy's courage and the mother's strength. Their story was a reminder of why his work mattered: to protect the innocent and help people find safety and peace. One afternoon, Daniels received a letter from the boy's school. The boy was about to start attending classes there, and the school wanted to prepare the teachers to support him in every way possible. Daniels smiled, feeling proud. This was a new beginning. As the boy walked into his new classroom on the first day, he felt a mix of nerves and excitement. But when he saw Daniels waiting outside with a warm smile and a thumbs up, he knew everything would be okay. He wasn't alone anymore. Over time, the boy made new friends and found joy in learning. His mother found work at a small local shop and started building a new life for them. The wounds of the past never completely disappeared, but the love and support around them helped them heal. This story, which began with tears and fear, ended with hope and courage. It showed how even in the darkest moments, people can find light through kindness, bravery, and care. The little boy and his mother faced great challenges, but they did not give up, and Officer Daniels, who had been there from the start, knew that their strength and resilience were the true heroes of the story.